Okay, we are started. So we're going to start Parak Beis, second chapter, and the theme of today's class, which we'll experience throughout the whole book, but it's certainly very much the center point of this early on prophecy of Yechezkel, is his passivity. It's a little bit strange even, and it becomes almost one of the hallmarks of Yechezkel's personality. And we'll see and talk about how that plays into a lot of his prophecy as a whole. So, at the end of chapter 1, we have Yechezkel on his face, right after his experience with the prophecy of the Ma'aseh Merkavah. So, ve'epol al panai, he falls on his face, and we open up Parak Beis with him on his face. V'yomer Eli ben Adam amod al raglecha v'adaber otach. So God says to him, stand on your feet, O son of man, which we're going to talk about in a minute too, and I will speak to you. V'tavo bi ruach ka'ashir diber Eli v'ta'amideni al raglai. So God says, stand up, and then he doesn't stand up, and then a wind comes and stands him up and puts him on his feet. Ve'eshma ate midaber Eli, and I heard God. So midaber is reflexive. It's God speaking to himself. So he overhears God speaking to himself. That language is actually an interesting language. We have it occur a couple of places in Tanakh. We actually have in Midbar Zion Peitet. If you want to take a look at it, at the end of the parsha. So the Midbar, chapter 7, the very end. It's like the longest chapter, I think. So it's the very end of all of the Nisim bring their korbanot. It's on page 346. Peitet, the very last pasuk, 89. Right? Ubevo Moshe el Ol Moed, when Moshe comes to the tent of meeting, Medaber ito, vayishma et kol, midaber elav, me'al hakapores. Right? He heard the voice speaking to itself from upon the kapores, and Moshe overheard, right, what was being said. So it's a strange language. We do have precedent here in other places, but it only happens really here and a couple places in Yechezkel.
You're not using the language in the sense of switching from Hebrew to Aramaic or something like that.
No. It's just an interesting way, meaning to speak reflexively is to speak to yourself, but he seems like he's talking to the prophet. It's almost part of this passivity, right? So he doesn't stand up, and then he doesn't really talk to God. He just overhears God kind of talking. And then you have the appellation of Ben Adam. So Ben Adam, that title, Son of Man, it happens 94 times in all of Tanakh. 93 of them are in Yechezkel. Okay? Yechezkel is almost never referred to as Yechezkel. I think it's once, other than the beginning, when we just find out his name. But I think the rest of the book, I think it's once. He's always Ben Adam, Ben Adam, Ben Adam. So some people, some of the Rishonim give a good answer that helps answer the question as to why he's called Ben Adam right now, but don't give you a overarching reason why he's called Ben Adam the rest of the book. At least it would seem to be a little bit of a short view. So, for example, Rashi gives two answers. He says, first of all, he quotes Midrash that to differentiate between him and the angels, right, because he's walking amongst the angels in the previous prophecy, so he's called Ben Adam, right? And exactly what that means, is that a positive, is that a negative, is it just to say, wow, he could walk with angels? What exactly the point of that Midrash? Rashi leaves it a little bit vague. Then Rashi says, I think it's a way of reminding Yechezkel, so it doesn't get to his head, that he's just a son of man, right? That after being given such a crazy prophecy in chapter 1, it may have gotten to him, wow, look at this amazing prophecy that I'm getting. It may have corrupted him, so to speak. So immediately after that, his name is is stripped, and he's just called Son of Man. Dr. Tova Ganzel, in her explanation, suggests that the contrast is not between the angels, but is actually with the Pnei Hadam from chapter 1. Right, we had the face of man on the chariot of God, and now we have Ben Adam, right, the Son of Man. So you have kind of an interesting, right. It's not a put down. It's not a reminder of, oh, you're not an angel. It's more of an uplifting message of, right, the face of man was on the chariot of God, and you're Ben Adam, right. You're the son of such man, right. So connecting him back to. We said last week that face was, according to the Midrashim, probably the face of Yaakov. I saw actually when I was looking through the article footnotes that he I don't even know who this is, but Rabbi M. Eisenman, not sure who that is, but he quotes that it's Ben Adam is harkening back to Adam Harishon, which is interesting also. You can read his explanation. Another interesting out there explanation. I think it's probably in. I'm going to go buzz her in. I think someone else got to it.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
can I ask you, I'm still a little confused from the beginning why we had to go back and reference Medaber Eli. Why is that so unusual?
Because it Medaber, it means speaking to yourself. Meaning it's reflexive. So
I mean,
it doesn't sound like it's a conversation. It wouldn't be a conversation. Meaning, it should be. Sorry.
it should be
Ve'eshma. Yeah, Medaber Eli.
Medaber.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. I mean, and also, I mean, it's the normal reaction, I guess, is going back to the end of last week, of what we did last week. So the normal reaction is he sees something which he thinks is a vision of Hashem. He goes down. That's what it seems that's what you're supposed to do from that when Hashem's glory comes around different places in Tanakh. And then he hears, okay, get up, and he is stood up by Hashem, so there's no confusion about
Meaning, in theory, when God says get up, he should have got up. He doesn't get up, and then in the next pasuk, he's gotten up. Right? We're going to see a couple of times where God says something, and then God does it. It's kind of like parents, you know? Moshe, please clean up. Moshe, please clean up. I'm helping you clean up, Moshe. Please clean up. And I'm basically cleaning up the whole floor now because he still hasn't cleaned up anything. Right? It's so.
I'm just okay. I was just reading it a little differently.
So you'll see a couple more examples of it.
I don't see it as a refusal to get up as much as that
it's a passivity.
Not enough.
Yeah. He's just slow. He's slow. I mean, he lacks a certain alacrity in terms of fulfilling God's word. He kind of takes it slow, and then God kind of like, hello.
Move on here. Yeah.
Right.
Got business to do.
Right. Exactly. So you'll see it happen a couple more times in this chapter, but then really throughout the entirety of the book. So the problem with these perspectives of Rashi, or even that of Dr. Ganzel, is that they're limited to this context of Ben Adam, which is immediately juxtaposed to that first prophecy. But Ben Adam happens 92 more times in the book, and you're not going to always have this, he needs a reminder. So also, we saw last 2 weeks ago that when Yeshayahu sees the prophecy of God's chariot, even though it isn't described the same grandeur, Chazal say he saw the same thing. There's no need for God to remind Yeshayahu, you're just a Ben Adam, right? So you don't have the same reaction that you have to Yeshayahu that you have to Yechezkel. So because of these shortcomings, it's still a question. So Rishon Karmi, one of my teachers from YU, so he wanted to argue that perhaps the theme of passivity, right, the fact that Yechezkel, right, it's kind of ironic because last week we talked about how the personality of a prophet can shape a prophecy, and how that's why the farm boy Yechezkel versus the city boy Yeshaya, why they're contrasted in terms of how they saw God's chariot. And here this week I'm saying the exact opposite, which is Rabbi Karmi says that in this book Yechezkel does not take the initiative almost at all throughout the book. He's so passive, he's so slow to get things done in so many capacities, in so many ways, that to some extent who Yechezkel was, his is so passive, he's just called Ben Adam. Now you could argue the flip. You could say that is his personality, and that is what's coming into the book, which is true, right? But Rabbi Karmi was basically saying he's so not active that it's the book itself strips him of his title Yechezkel. An interesting theory. I think the question is still better than any of the answers. Why he's called Ben Adam, but a couple of different perspectives that are food for thought.
I think it's for us rather than for Yechezkel in person.
What do you mean?
I think he's God is speaking to all of mankind and wants everybody to get going.
So let's continue reading, and you'll tell me if you think that fits. So we'll definitely try it. I'm open to all theories. So
Adam almost also implies every man. It's
Yeah.
right. I mean, we're gonna see right after calling him Ben Adam, he's gonna give a. I mean, there's a little bit of a. You'll see in a second. There's a little bit more gray areas, but maybe we can run with it with this perspective. We'll see. So. Pasuk Gimel, Vayomer Eli Ben Adam Sholeach Ani Osecha El Bnei Yisrael El Goyim Hamordim Asher Mardu Bi. Okay, so I'm going to send you to the Jewish people, and then what? El Goyim Hamordim, to the nations that rebel. So Bnei Yisrael are nations, right? That's a little bit of a strange. They're a nation. Right, El Hagoy Hamoraid, right, Asher Mardubi, Hemavavotam Pashubi, they and their forefathers sinned against me, Ad Etzem Yomazeh, until this day. Almost like there's never been a good Jew ever, right? But it's clearly talking about the Jewish people, but then it says El Goyim Hamordim. So all the Rishonim try to figure out what does that mean to the nations. So some people say, Rashi quotes, that it's Binyamin and Yehuda, because they are two Shvatim that still were in, right, part of this exile of Yoyachin, right, because that area of Israel was, there's probably some Levites too. You could have added maybe some Shimonites too. Shimon was a little bit more south, so it's possible that Shimon, right, also survived the initial exile, but who knows? Meaning the two nations, the two Shvatim that for sure are still around, because Yerushalayim is the epicenter. It's that's where Binyamin and Yehuda for sure were around. You certainly probably had some Leviim. You probably had some Shimonites. But the idea is that there's multiple Shvatim. So the Goyim here, the multiple nations, is referring to multiple Shvatim. That's the perspective of Rashi. The Radak gives a different answer. He says it's basically putting the Jewish people in the context of the surrounding nations, right? That the Jewish people are like all the rest of the nations that are not, right? They're not listening. They're all just rebellious nations, and the Jews are just like everybody else. And so it's the Jewish people amongst the nations, right? Which, again, like I said, you were talking about Ben Adam being a more generic thing. The problem with that, in my opinion, is that often the focus of Yechezkel's prophecies are very Jew-centric. Like I said, you have a little bit of a gray right there of to the Jewish nation, to the Goyim. So once you're going with Ben Adam being a more universal type of description of Yechezkel, so then perhaps, right, you'd go that way. But again, the prophecies of Yechezkel are so wrapped up in the Beit HaMikdash. Again, maybe you could argue, like we did with Shlomo Melech, that the Beit HaMikdash was supposed to be the center of the whole world, culture, and everything else. I feel like you can run with this idea, but you have to. There's work to be done to argue that for Ben Adam.
Is it possible that Jews are being interspersed among the other nations, that he's sending a prophecy to the Jews, and they're amongst these other nations, they're amongst these other people. So we know what happens with the 10 tribes. They get intermixed and don't come back. He's kind of saying, no, I'm going to send, these Jews are going to survive.
So one of the ironies or the hard things to fully understand is to figure out who Yechezkel's audience is supposed to be, because the whole first prophecy about the God leaving the Beit HaMikdash is relevant to the people in exile, but it's more relevant to the people in Israel, right? Meaning, the idea to some extent is Yechezkel is trying to tell the people in Bavel, you think you're rejected, you think you're nothing, don't worry, right? You're going to end up becoming the saving grace. God's going to save us through you, but that's going to happen much later. This whole first half of the book is all about the destruction, and it's all really about the Jews in Israel. And we're going to see even, right, if I were to ask you what is the main goal of prophecy in Tanakh, what would you say? Like, when a prophet prophesies, what's the main thrust he's trying to get to?
Delivering the word of Hashem.
Delivering the word of Hashem for what end?
To correct behavior.
Right, to correct behavior. Right? So often that means tshuva. Right? Often. We're going to find that with Yechezkel, delivering the word of Hashem is an end on its own. And the result of that delivery is irrelevant almost to Yechezkel, or at least he doesn't seem to care. It seems to be all about the delivery as opposed to how the delivery leads to a certain reform. The reform is an afterthought at best, if it ever shows up. And the language of, right, Ki Ani Hashem, or because you're a Navi, right, appears something like 60 times throughout the book. So many times, I'm going to send you so that they know I'm Hashem. That's it. There's no, so that you can become better people, so that you can reform your ways. No, you're going to know you have a prophet amongst you, and then I'm Hashem. We're going to see it in like a second, the first of the Kazam Navi, right? That I'm sending you, not because I think it's going to work. I think it's going to flop. I think it's going to fail. I think you're not going to have any impact, but they're going to know they have a prophet amongst them.
Do we have any archaeological evidence that you're aware of from that time about the Jewish influence amongst other nations at that point? Or they're, unlike David, because the Lashon of this basically says it goes back, it doesn't go forward. Right. It doesn't go present, well, a little present, but it goes back, Ham Avotam. So I'm just wondering if we have any archaeological evidence that would show potentially that there was Jewish influence or intermingling, or whatever you want to call it, right, amongst other nations at the time. It seems we're subjects, not masters.
Right. I mean, the very least, we're meaning, I think, building off of David's point, the fact that the 10 Shvatim, when they were exiled, get completely subsumed under their cultures. So the big chiddush of the Galut of Yechonia, right, and his crowd is that they remain Jewish, and they remain devoted to kind of this idea, and I think to a large extent, having a Yechezkel character as that reminder that you have a Navi, even though you've been rejected, so to speak, was probably very helpful. Having exactly the archaeological evidence that there was particular influence. So when we were doing Malachim back in Israel this time, you have this big debate as to whether to align ourselves with Bavel or not, right? Which has been this ongoing debate of these last kings. So we noted that Bavel doesn't quite do the same thing that some of the other alliances did, right? When they aligned themselves with Ashur and with other nations, right? The influence of culture was very heavy. When it came to Bavel, the prophets were willing to tolerate, right? Even encourage certain kings to make treaties because it seemed like the cultural influence was much less palpable. So that doesn't help. That hurts, right? But that's kind of the context that I know of that's going on at this time. I don't know of any archaeological evidence one way or the other.
I heard something once, I think it was above of a rabbi, who told a story about post-Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
The story's kind of long, but the end result is, even though we don't look like the Baba or Hasidim that we had in Europe with everything else, we're still the Baba or Hasidim. And that was his message to his people was, even though we're starting over, where numbers are decimated, we don't have the cities, the Beit Midrashim, the same rabbis, everything, Hashem still recognizes us, we're still the Baba or Hasidim. So is that possible here, that just the message itself, Hashem recognizes we're still the Jewish people?
For sure. Meaning, I think Yechezkel is very successful in maintaining this Jewish identity amongst the exiles. You're just going to see how passive he is in the whole process. It's very interesting. But let's get back. But I appreciate the questions. They're good. They're helpful to putting things in context in broader ways. So, V'habanim kshei panim v'chizkei lev. The children are hard-faced and hard-hearted. Ani sholech otcha alehem v'amarta alehem ko amar, right? Hashem Elokim. I'm sending you to tell them. This is what God says. V'hema im yishma'u v'im yichdalu ki beis meri hema. If they listen, great. If they're not going to listen, probably because they're a bunch of rebellious ones, right? V'yadu ki navi haya betocham. At the very least, what they'll learn is that they have a prophet amongst them, right? In this language of ki, right? Ki Hashem betocham or ki navi haya betocham. This language appears multiple times throughout the book. I think it's something like 60 times, like a lot of times, and it's almost a replacement for, right, the tshuva call, which is often the next step of right. Meaning this whole message here, right, is talking about, to some extent, he saw the vision of God's chariot leaving, right, the Beit Mikdash. I want you to share this vision with the Jewish people so that, right, they understand, right, God has left the building, right, God has left the Beit Mikdash, and that God is going to exile to some extent with you guys, right? Exactly how that works, not so clear, but they're not going to listen, right? It's just not going to penetrate. We've pointed this out a number of times. The Jews did not believe God would let his Beit Mikdash be destroyed. There had been too many opportunities for that to happen that didn't happen. They did not believe that was true. V'ata ben adam al tira mehem midivrehem al tira ki saravim vasalonim otach ve'el akrabim mata yoshev midivrehem al tira mipnehem al tichat ki beit meri hema. Right, in Smicha, this is what we learn all of our balabatim are going to be. So, no, stop. Just joking, right? So he says, right, don't worry, right? They're going to be rebellious, a rebellious house. You're going to tell them what you need to tell them, and they're going to be like scorpions and other things trying to like catch you at any turn. But don't fear what they have to say, because they're rebellious people. V'dibarta es divarai aleihem im yishma'u v'im yichdalu kimiri. Okay, I did that already. V'ata ben adam. And now, son of man, Shema is asher ani medaber elecha. Right, that's what it should have been. Instead of midaber, it should have been medaber. That's the talking to someone as opposed to yourself. V'al tehi meri kebeit hameri pitzei picha. Okay, so what happens? So God says, "No, go tell the Jewish people." Okay, and then we have a break, right? A little break in the writing. And then what does God say? V'ata ben adam, and now, son of man, listen, right, what I'm saying to you. Don't rebel, right, like this Jewish nation. Right? Pitzei picha ve'echol. Open your mouth and eat asher ani noten lecha, what I'm going to give you. Okay? So, it almost sounds like, right, and some of the Rishonim point this out, it almost sounds like God is like God says to Yechezkel, I want you to go tell the Jewish people so they know there's a Navi. And he doesn't go. Right? Just like he doesn't stand up, he doesn't go. And so God says, I'm going to feed it to you now. I'm going to feed you some words, and it's going to be very literal, actually. But some of the Rishonim read into this kind of break between go do this and then don't be a rebellious one. What do you mean don't be a rebellious one? Did God think that Yechezkel was going to be a rebellious one? So there's two themes, right? So one is passivity, and another one is people talk about is how Yechezkel to some extent may have felt a little bit like Yonah, like Moshe Rabbeinu, in different ways, That both of those prophets did not want to be prophets when they're first told for different reasons, Moshe didn't think he was worthy, Yonah didn't want to be the bearer of bad news to the Jewish people, which is more akin to what's going on here, Yechezkel just doesn't want to deal, I mean, Moshe also has the piece, he doesn't think the Jews will listen to him, and here God's telling Yechezkel, the Jews are not going to listen to you, but go do it anyways, I want you to hit them over the head, and when they don't listen to you, it's fine. Because at the end of the day, they'll find out that you're right, that the Beit HaMikdash is going to be destroyed. And when they do, you will gain credibility for having done that, But in terms of the bigger picture, the bigger goals, nothing is accomplished. So Yechezkel's like, why? Let me just stay home. And God says, don't be rebellious like the rebellious nation. I'm going to give you words and you're going to say them.
And he's seeing what's happening to his contemporary
Yirmiyahu. Right. Yirmiyahu is like a good comparison to Yechezkel because as bad as the prophecy as bad as Yechezkel is portraying the Jewish people amongst Yechezkel, they don't really ever do anything too bad to him. And in fact, they come to him and they listen to him and they ask him for stuff. I mean, it's really interesting as opposed to Yirmiyahu. He's like running for his life and he eventually gets killed. It's the exact opposite, experience in terms of the actual responses. At the same time, still there's some sort of they still don't believe him. They still not gonna, So it's not quite as stark as Yirmiyahu's challenge, but it's also not a simple situation for him either. Fine. So he's trying to get out of this, and God says, I'm going to feed you what I'm going to feed you. Ver'eh v'hinei yad shlucha ilai. And all of a sudden, there was a hand that was sent to him. V'hinei bo Megillat Sefer. And there was an actual text that was handed to him. Exactly what this hand is this some spiritual hand? Is this some shliach? I'm not sure. But somehow, it's clear to him that this came from God. Vayifros ota lefanai, vehik tuva panim va'achor, and it has written on its front and its back, v'katuv eleha kinim v'hege vahi, and written on it is basically all the terrible stuff you can imagine. Okay, so that's what's written on this Megillat Sefer that's handed to him from this strange place, wherever this exactly happens, and these are the words that God is feeding him, so to speak. And normally what that means is I'm going to tell you what to say and then you're going to say it, but here feeding him words is actually another piece of the book of Yechezkel. There's a lot of these very literal prophetic images that take place not just as a metaphor, but they literally happen as a metaphor, but he actually is going to eat the book, which is strange. So you have it's like a dramatic flair in Yechezkel, but he does it quite often. So I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Right, so one point that Dot Mikra makes is that an interesting difference between Yechezkel and Yirmiyahu as well is that because Yechezkel, and this talks to audience, because Yechezkel is talking to the Galut, to the Gola, so the main sinning, are still the Jews who are still in Israel. So to some extent, the Beit HaMikdash is a fait accompli, It's happening. There's no way around it to this point. And for Yechezkel, there's nothing he can do to avert it. Right? If all the Jews in exile do tshuva, the Beit HaMikdash is still getting destroyed. Right? As opposed to Yirmiyahu, when Yirmiyahu gives his prophecies, he still offers tshuva as an option to the people, to the Jews in Israel, saying, if you reform your ways, right, then you can stem off or prevent the Beit HaMikdash from being destroyed. Right? Yechezkel doesn't really have the right people he's talking to actually accomplish that. So that might also contribute to the lack of tshuva in Yechezkel's talk and the presence of tshuva in Yirmiyahu. So it's one other piece to this that's interesting to think about when you think about who they're talking to. Fine. So fine, good. So chapter 3. Right, what time is it? We got time still, yeah? Yeah, we got 12 minutes. So we're going to start chapter 3 and we'll pick up wherever we leave off. So, Vayomer Eli ben Adam, Eit asher timsa echol Megillah hazot, v'leich daber el beis Yisrael. So God says to him, I want you to eat your Megillah. Okay? Right, so this is like a whole other level of Purim celebration, right? If you get so drunk until the point that you eat, not your Suda, but you eat your Megillah. Right? So here, Yechezkel is commanded, I want you to eat this very depressing book.
He has to say it twice.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Because, again, probably because he's like, I don't want to eat the book.
It's like in this week's Parsha, Avraham. It's like you have to make sure he gets the message.
Yeah. V'eftach es pi v'yachileni. So what happens? He feeds him. God says to him, eat the book. And what happens? He's like, no. It's like, I'm telling you, it's like talking to your kids. Right? Eat your dinner. Tati, can you feed me? No, eat your dinner. You're 5 years old. What the? But you're feeding Esty. Dad, she's a baby still. You eat your dinner. Right? So God says, eat the book. And then what happens? He doesn't eat the book. God has to feed him the book. So again, it's just this kind of line of it, and it's not even explicit. It's so like subtle, right? It's just he commands him, and then the very next pasuk he does it. But it's that delay. It's almost like, right, as Mark pointed out, right? It's just he's just not running to do anything, and God's just like, come on, let's go. So he feeds him the book, right? So vayechileni es Megillah azot. Vayomer Eli ben Adam bitnecha te'achel ume'echa timalei. Right, so your stomach will eat and your innards will be full. Eat Megillah azot with this Megillah. Asher ani noten elecha va'ochla v'tehi befi kidvash matok, and it will turn into, right, a sweetness. So all the Rishonim here say, right, the diagnosis that the Jewish people are going to have the Beit HaMikdash destroyed and everyone's going to have to be kicked out of Israel. That's a hard pill to swallow, right? That's this Megillah filled with kinim hege vahi, right? But when the credibility is built up for Yechezkel that he is a true prophet, that when the book shifts in part 2 to being about the rebuilding of the next Beit HaMikdash and the return to Israel, all of a sudden, right, the credibility he gained by giving this prophecy that's not going to have any effect, right, all of a sudden becomes the sweetest of things, right? And so that's kind of what's playing out here in the beginning of the book is what's going to be, right, once the book shifts, right? So all of a sudden this terrible pill becomes, right, this very sweet tasting thing in his mouth.
Vatihi means,
And it will be.
and it will be. So it's not that it was. I mean, it's.
It is.
I'm trying to make some sense of the grammar here. Or am I looking too closely?
It's all good. Vatihi befi kidvash lamatok, and it will be in your mouth like. So meaning, the pasuk is
In my
talking.
mouth. No, but he's saying.
Yeah.
But he's saying, in other words.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen once he ingests this whole thing.
It starts in the past tense. Vayomer Eli.
Yeah. Ben Adam
Hashem said to me.
Tachel. Himalay. think it's future tense. No, Otiyot Eitan. It's Ta'achel and Timale are both
Okay. So
right.
he said
Your stomach will fill, and your innards will be sated or whatever, and then it will
be in my mouth.
sweet.
Okay.
Meaning,
Right,
this is
right.
talking in a much more truncated
Right,
point.
okay.
The metaphor is talking in a much longer arc, right? That right now, right, this is all negative, and one day it will be positive. What's happening here is much more. I don't think he had to ingest this book for a long time, and then only eventually it turns sweet. It happens in his mouth, so it happens pretty quickly, even though at first he seems to not want to do it, and right. It's a book of all these terrible things. It does switch. So
No, Chlaz is not Mapechet. So that's past tense.
What?
Chlaz past tense. Right?
ve'ochla,
Mapechet. So it's past tense.
right?
Right.
Ve'ochla, because it's otiyot eitan, but it's above.
He gave him. He gave him. He said, and he fed me the Megillah.
Ve'ochla, and you will have eaten it. Vatihi, and it will be. Yeah, it's really strange. You're right.
It is. Yeah.
One more thing, I know that you're going along with the passivity thing, but I'm going to just counter it just a little
Please,
bit. So
please.
far, and maybe in the future, maybe that won't be. He's not given a chance.
So-
if you look at the Lashon, he's not given a chance. In every instance so far that you said is passive, so far, if you look back,
It's the very next pasuk, in each time. Meaning God says something, and then the next
no,
pasuk.
but and as I opened my mouth, bam, he went to take the action. The same thing him with the Ruach Hashem, by the way, as you look. Okay.
And I opened my mouth, and God fed me. You're right.
I went to do it. Boom. I didn't
Right.
have a chance. Same thing with the before.
With the standing up.
Yeah, but I mean,
So less, but yes.
As the spirit is, I didn't get a chance. Like, it said stand, and boom. I
Right.
got the spirit. That sounds like to me like it's almost God's impatience.
So it's happening to him.
Yeah,
Rather
it's
than
like
him being a part of it,
he initiates the action,
Okay.
but then
Right. So, meaning, Mark was kind of in between this perspective and my perspective, which was that he's just not going fast enough, right? So, that's also a possible way of understanding this. But we'll see. There's going to be more in
So I'm sure I was gonna say-
in the rest of the book. But
Certainly, it's kind of funny that he describes it as sweet as honey when it's such a grim message.
right. So that's the point, right? The point is that though it starts that way, right? Because he's built up by giving this negative prophecy in the beginning, he builds up a certain credibility once the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed. So then at the end of his prophecy, when he starts prophesying about the rebuilding, so that will be sweet. So it's kind of this, the negative stuff turns into a positive thing in the long arc of the book.
Delayed gratification.
Exactly.
As he was speaking,
Right.
as he was speaking to me,
Right.
the Ruach entered me.
So one thing I realized I forgot. So Rabbi Angel pointed out that we have an interesting echo of this idea of the Ruach Elokim standing him up or telling him to stand up in our davening. Right? Whenever we bow to God, we say Baruch Atah, bend our knees, Atah, and then when we get to Hashem, we're supposed to be straight again. Right? That to some extent, that notion of standing before God, even though, right, like you said, we normally assume that you're supposed to be kind of on your face, right, when God kind of appears to you in a certain way. Right? When we talk to God, it's almost like it's the reverse. Right? We actually straighten ourselves up. And this is kind of maybe where it's from. That's a suggestion. Yeah. I just forgot to mention that. So I think it's a good pushback. I think it's definitely possible. I'm trying to think if that's the case. So then it's almost like, right, the struggle here is God just wants to get through, right? This time of history. It's almost like, no, let's go, guys. We gotta get back on track. Okay, well, I think it's worth keeping also as a working theory. Fine. So we have a couple more minutes, so we'll get a little bit further and then we'll stop. So, Vayomer Elai ben Adam lech bo el Beit Yisrael v'dibarta b'devarai alehem. So go speak to them kilo el am im safa v'chivdei lashon tashaluach el Beit Yisrael. And again, this is for your Ben Adam theory, right? There's a couple of these. I don't even know what to really make of this, right? They're not a foreign-speaking nation, right? They're the Jewish people, right? Like it shouldn't be such a hard job. And again, this also speaks a little bit to the passivity point, right? That it's almost like it sounds like he's dragging his feet and he needs a pitch for why he should be going to do this. Go, come on! It's just the Jewish people. They're not. It's not like you have to speak a different language. It's just not a hard job here. Come on, let's go. Lo el amim rabim imke. Right, just did that. No, it's the same thing again. Lo el amim rabim imke safa v'chivdei lashon asher lo tishma divreihem im lo aleihem shlachticha hem yishmeu elecha. Right, and he kind of switches it. It's kind of like a shtuch to the Jewish people, right? If I had sent you to a nation that didn't speak your language and you had been all exotic and whatnot, you know what? They probably would have listened to you, right? You're right. These Jews, they're not such good listeners. Beis Yisrael lo yavu lishmo elecha ki einam ovim lishmo elai. They're not going to listen to you because they don't listen to me, right? Ki kol Beis Yisrael chizkei metzach ukshay leiv hema, because they're a bunch of stubborn, head hard children who don't listen. It's kind of like when the parent comes to the teacher and says, "I don't know what to tell you. They don't listen to me. Good luck." Good luck. I don't know. I have no answers for you, right? So the guy's like, yeah, they're not going to listen to you. They don't listen to me. So good luck with that. Hinei nasati es picha chazakim l'umat pneihem vet metzchacha chazak l'umat metzcham. God says, don't worry. I've made your head as hard as their head, and your forehead as hard as their forehead, so you guys can bash heads together. Kishamir chazak mitzur, just like a shamir, a special worm can cut through stone. Nasati metzchacha. So I've made your forehead so that when you come into contact with their foreheads, you'll be able to slice them through. Lo siraotam, do not fear them. Velo techas mipneihem ki beit merihema, don't fear their faces because they are a rebellious nation. So, again, it's fascinating how many times God basically tells Yechezkel, I really don't think you're going to be successful, but go do it, right? It's not, and it speaks to this other piece that we've talked about, kind of laid the groundwork for, which is there's this major theme of that they should know there's a prophet amongst you. They should know that I am God, right? That is an end of itself for the prophet Yechezkel, as opposed to many of the other prophets, where the goal is some sort of reformation, some sort of tshuva throughout the book. So we'll stop with Pasuk Yud, and we'll pick up next week.
Can I ask one very quick question?
Absolutely.
Just a historical question. So the Jews who ultimately set up the yeshivot in Babel, is it from this exile, or is it from the exile out of the second temple?
Yeah, no, it's much later. So this
group, because I know they don't all go back, right? When they go back to build a second.
Right, they don't all go back. That's true.
So what happens to those who are left? They aren't the precursors that ultimately.
They might be. They might be, but it's a long time.
Yeah.
It's like 500, 600 years of time.
Right.
Like it's a long time between now and then.
But it gives some legitimacy to the group that sits in Babylonia. You know that there's a prophet walking among them. At some level, it kind of says, okay, you're exiles, but you're still part of the people. You know, it's certainly a long-term play, but it's
right.
Another, I guess, potential way to think.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it. I mean, the truth is that the people who are exiled to Babel are right, exactly. So if there are some who are layovers, yeah, I think it's a good point. I never thought about it though. I'm not positive if there's a constant presence or not. I could try and look at
history as like when you look back, you have to kind of look back and start and see where the stream goes. understand as rivulets, like when we talked about those Jews in the Elephantine,
Mhm.
that the Gemara doesn't talk about.
Right.
I mean, there was no history about them until 100 years or so ago, I
Right.
guess, because they weren't part of the common narrative.
Right.
They died out, or they left, or somehow became part of the regular narrative.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say right that there probably were Jews who stayed in Babylonia, but they weren't part of the.
Right,
Well,
it's kind of
whether
like
they
the
were-
Ethiopians today, like
Right.
meaning they're now part of the big Israel narrative, but for so long they were just not known. Right.
Right. I always think, like, if you read a history of Europe, you read any of those history books, you don't see anything about Jews in there. Yeah, we had Jews that lived in ghettos. Then you read Jewish history. Well, Rashi lived at this time. Rambam lived at this. It's like, and they're living in the same places.
Right.
It's like two parallel worlds are going. Two parallel
Yeah,
worlds
for sure.
are going on. But if you would ask a European history guy like about the Jews, they were sitting there living their ghettos. They really weren't part of the imperative of history.
Right.
Where for us, the rest of the world wasn't part. They were there.
Was Ezra Nehemiah who brought
Back.
people back after whatever the 7 years in Bavel.
Yeah.
But they didn't bring the best of the bunch.
No, they didn't.
So to your point, though.
Right,
so,
but the question is, once the Beit HaMikdash was built,
Mhm.
so then
Did everybody go back?
not
Probably
everybody, not everybody, but
Like
meaning
living in America.
Well,
No, not really.
They
Like they
stayed-
had Israel was not an easy place to be.
right.
They stayed in Iraq until 1949, I think. They were expelled when the
No,
Jews
right.
weren't.
But to the point that there were the intelligentsia, I'm sure many stay.
Right.
That's-
No,
that's
you're probably right. You're probably right.
Right.
I'm just not sure.
And the other thing is,
And it was a long time. It was many years.
That they would have had to stay.
Yeah.
You know, when I
I'm
was
very proud of people.
When I was-
I can see it. It's not such a stretch.
Right.
No, no, no.
Speaking of the-
he was being sent to. I'm sorry, because he was being sent to Israel, right? I mean, that was the vision, correct?
So it sounds like it's not clear exactly.
Because
who
you
is-
said before he was prophesying amongst his own people, but it
Meaning
sounds like he's
he
being
gets
sent.
this prophecy on Harkfar with the exiles, but the message is very much for the people of Israel. But it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like he goes to the people of Israel.
Ah.
So
He doesn't make it.
it doesn't sound like it.
Uh-huh.
There's this time where the wind's going to take him to see over Jerusalem. Like there's going to be some interesting
Uh-huh.
things to come, but it's
So we don't know that he ever made it.
it's not
per
clear.
se. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's not clear. It's not clear that he's even who he's supposed to speaking to. It could be he's supposed to be speaking to his people because it's to build credibility for later. Even though the message for them is not, it's kind of lost on them because like it's really for. But none of them really believed God was going to destroy the Beit HaMikdash. So maybe it was for them to hear, oh, God's going to destroy the Beit HaMikdash, right? So that when He does destroy the Beit HaMikdash, oh, Yechezkel's legit, right? So that's the piece. It's not so clear.
I just have a side interest about
Yeah.
the Jews.